From Isaiah chapter 43, Prophet Isaiah is prophesying to the people of God who were in captivity about how God cares for them and knows them by name. First couple of verses. Fear not, I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burnt, and the flame shall not consume you. And verse 5, fear not, for I am with you. I will bring you offspring from the east, and from the west I will gather you. I don't know about you. In our house, we always play with the thermostat because we can get the temperature quite right. Either it is too hot or it is too cold. And we have this little device that we think we can manipulate to make us feel comfortable, and it never works. Because I'll be warmer and my wife will be cold, and she changes it and I change it back, and it goes back and forth. Happens a lot. Often we wish we could control the conditions of our lives like that, with some settings that we can manipulate and control. But certainly, it's not the case. We all go through situations of very hot and fiery furnace situations. The Christian journey is very similar to the journey that the people of Israel did in the wilderness. So we compare that a lot. They had to go through the experiences of water and fiery furnace and heat. But all through those journey that they had to take, there was always the presence of God with them. God was with them when they crossed the Red Sea and the river of Jordan, and when they went through the heat and tiring travel in the desert. God was with them through the clouds and also at night as light for them. In the Lord Jesus Christ, when he started his ministry, he went to John the Baptist to get baptized. So the ministry started with a pass through the waters, and then in the Garden of Gethsemane and ultimately on the cross, we see the Son of Man in the fiery furnace of God's wrath. Our journey is very similar to that. We go through the waters and the fiery furnace situations, and sometimes we get scared and afraid. Through Prophet Isaiah to his people who were experiencing some similar situation, that fear not, I am your God, and I know you by name, and I called you by name. And when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you walk through fire, the flame shall not consume you. The great promise for a people who have been afraid. I remember the story of the three young men in the book of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The young men were taken as captives by a foreign king, where they were required to worship idols and other gods. But they stood firm on their faith, and ultimately they had to pay the price of being in the fiery furnace. It was real fire, and the flames were so hot that the very men, the soldiers who took them to put in the fire, were burnt, and the king thought it was done. But he came to the furnace afterwards and looked probably to find the ashes of those young men, but he saw three men walking in the fire, but he also saw a fourth man, a fourth person. So he was kind of startled and afraid and said, didn't we put only three people in the fire? But I see four men walking in the furnace now. As people who are, we can see or we can feel that the fourth person that was walking in the fire was none other than the Son of God. who has promised that He will be with you, our Emmanuel, God be with us, and He will never leave us or forsake us in any situations of our life. Dear friends, that is the promise that God has given to His people. In Hebrews we read that we do not have a high priest who do not know our situations, who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet without sin. A God who is with us, who has gone through the same situations and experiences that you and I go through. He knows our pain. He knows our hurts and our feelings and our frustrations. And He can comfort us in times like this. If you are in a fiery furnace situation, remember, God is there with you. Believe me, it is a great experience to feel the presence of God in the furnace. In James chapter 1, we read, when you face trials and persecutions, do not think it strange. That means you can expect it to happen. But God's Son will be there in the fire with you. A lot of times that our prayer is to protect us from the fire. This is very good. Lord, deliver us from. But it may not be the situation in many cases. You may have to go through the fire, but God's promise is not only just to protect you from the fire, which He might do, but even if you are in the fire, He will protect you in the fire. A deliverance of God that you can experience while you are in the fire, that He will go through that with you. That is what David says in Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you will be with me. And God's presence will be there, or as He is there here today. It may not be a pleasant situation in the furnace, but the joy of having to experience the presence of God in the furnace is the greatest joy that you can ever experience. He is Emmanuel, God with us. So count it all joy when we are in fiery trials. That's what Peter says. And also the promise is that God will be present with us when we go through waters. When you pass through rivers, they will not overflow you. The storms and the thunder may rock your very basic foundations. The promise of God to His people is that He will be there so that you will not be under the water, but you will be over the water. The water will never overflow you. In children, we know a little child who is scared of going through automatic car wash. He just screams as the brush and the water just starts falling over the car as it goes through that car wash. It kind of was interesting to me. So I kind of looked around and did some research to see how many kids are actually afraid of this car wash. I thought it was exciting. But it is not the case. There are adults who are actually afraid of automatic car wash. One of the persons who actually writes about it, the powers beyond my control moves the car beyond on a conveyor belt. There I was sitting inside the car, cocooned inside, where a thunderous rush of water, soap and brushes hit the car from all directions. Then I get scared. What if I get stuck here? And I can't open the door and I cannot get out of this conveyor belt. Probably some of us might think that it was irrational to think like that. But there are adults who go through that scare and fear when they go through this car wash. But there is a time when the waters will stop, and then the car slowly moves to a place where it gets dry with the air blower, and you will see you can get out on a firm ground right after that. Sometimes our life can be car wash experience. We go through those powerful force of water that will come and strike us unexpectedly sometimes. And our vehicle moves without our own control. Sometimes we feel that there is nothing that we can do, and we are helpless. But in the midst of car wash experience in our lives, choked by all external pressures, and your life may be moving out of control, your own control, remember, He is a faithful God. He will be with you in the car while you go through that situation in your life. Jesus said, you will have tribulation in this world, but remember, I have overcome the world. He is a God who can relate to our experience. We can rest assured that He will be with us. His presence will be our guide in experiences like that. When trouble comes, His presence is His promise. Faith is believing that God is present when all we hear is thunder and lightning and see lightning. He is the very same God who is Emmanuel, God with us. A few years ago, I don't know if you I wrote a testimony in Upper Room and they published it. We had decided to buy a new home and move over to the north side of the town where my job was at that time. So we went through the purchase of the house and getting excited to be the coming closer. And we put our old house on sale in the market. We were filled with excitement of moving into a new house with new experience. But 2 days after closing the new house, as we were moving in, I lost my job. That was a fiery experience, not only fiery experience, but also it was a suffocating experience going through like the storms and water. If God has been with me, how can this happen? We have now 2 mortgages to pay. Doesn't God know this? And then both of our kids were in college at that time. We were very concerned and I was afraid. But the promise of God, family said, and when you pass through the waters, it will not overflow you. You will be going over the waters. Remember Peter? Peter wanted to jump into the sea and walk with Jesus and he was going down. But when he held on and looked at Jesus' face, he was able to go over the waves and not under the waves. Promises of God encourage us as a family. The nearness of God in the fire is a unique experience. I wrote in that little testimony that I wrote at that time that we will not as a family will ever exchange any other experiences for that what we went through. Because the experience and the joy of having God in the midst of your fire is a unique experience that you will never ever experience afterwards or before that. He is a God who has promised to be with us in the fire and He will be with us in the waters. That the fire cannot burn you, nor the waters will overflow you. The unpredictability of our life is not very thrilling. We devise and plan and we strategize. We make plans and projections and proposals that think are very nice and very good. They're all good. Let us do that, continue to do that. But often they are little more than just guesses. We have no idea what tomorrow will bring or next moment will bring to us. There are countless things that you and I cannot be certain about. What I can know, however, is that there is a God who knows and loves and deeply enough that He will send His own Son to be a sacrificial death for you and me. And He knows me by my name. And He calls me by my name. After we went through that experience, God was faithful. We were able to get through and after a few months I was able to find another job. Thank God, everything worked out. Sometimes it may not be that easy. But still, He is the same God as He was yesterday. He will be today and He will be forever. As we celebrate Jesus' baptism today, let us remember our own baptisms through water. As we pass through waters, He will be with us. And the fires will not burn you. He calls you by your name. We can hear His voice. Do not be afraid. I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you go through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. A believer, that is all win-win. Because God is there with you. He will never let you go under because He will also go under. So He will never let your foot be slipped, so you will fall. It is a win-win. Like Paul says, to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. A widow of a missionary was traveling on a ship to meet her only daughter in Australia. She started from England, London. There was a fierce storm during that journey that threatened the lives of the people in that ship. People were panicked and started to throw away things and getting ready for lifeboats. Old woman on the deck along with the other passengers, singing a beautiful hymn, a hymn of hope. And one of the passengers asked her why she was so calm and how can she sing in the middle of the storm when people are panicking for their lives. Aren't you interested in getting a lifeboat? But she said very calmly and quietly, I know it is a terrible situation here today. And we are pressed by the storms all over, so we might even lose our ship and our lives. But if the ship sinks and I die, I will be going to heaven. And I know I can join my husband in heaven if I die tonight. But if that's not the case, if we survive, and if I make it to the other shore, I know I will be able to join my daughter. Either way, it is a win-win situation for people of God. For us to live is Christ and to die is gain. No matter what we go through, remember, there is a God who will go through that with you. He will deliver you and me in the fire, not from the fire sometimes. There is a beautiful hymn written in the early 1900s by Louis Jones. Upon life's boundless ocean where mighty billows roll, I have fixed my hope in Jesus, best anchor of my soul. When trials, fears assail me as storms are gathering roar, I have anchored in Jesus, the storms of life I will brave. I have anchored in Jesus, I fear no wind or wave. He keeps my soul from evil and gives me blessed peace. People of God, as we live here today, take that promise with you. Whatever happens tomorrow doesn't matter to us, because there is a powerful God who is greater than our problems that has promised to go with us.